I never thought the person who would break my marriage and my soul would be sitting across from me at my mother's dining table. But that night, I looked into the bathroom mirror, hands gripping the sink, and whispered to myself, I can't believe what I just did. My name is Alyssa. I'm 33 years old, married to a good man named Daniel. Good in the way that looks nice on paper, steady job, pays the bills, comes home on time. But good isn't always enough. Not when it's mixed with distance and routine, so heavy it feels like you're living in a silent movie. Daniel works in construction management, which means long hours and late-night calls. I used to wait up for him. I used to try. But after years of one-sided conversations and watching him fall asleep on the couch, I started to feel invisible. Then came Frank. Frank has been in my life since I was 13. He married my mother after my dad left us, and though I never called him Dad, he was always around. Fixing things, driving me to school, giving advice in his quiet, gruff way. Over the years, he became less of a father figure and more just Frank. Harmless, steady, safe. Until that night. It was a Saturday in late spring. My mother had invited us over for a backyard barbecue. The smell of grilled burgers and charcoal floated through the air, mixing with the hum of crickets. My mom buzzed around the patio like always, making sure everyone had enough to eat. Daniel stayed for a couple of hours, but of course, work called. He kissed my cheek, said he'd be home late, and left me there with my mom and Frank. I didn't mind. Honestly, it felt easier than going home to an empty house. By 10 o'clock, my mom yawned and said she was turning in. Frank, make sure Alyssa gets home safe, she said, disappearing into the house. And just like that, it was me and him. The night air was warm, the fire pit crackling between us. Frank poured himself another whiskey and offered me a glass of wine. I hesitated, then nodded. You okay, kiddo? He asked, leaning back in his chair. Yeah, I said automatically. Just life, you know. He chuckled. I know that tone. Marriage trouble. I hesitated. I didn't usually open up to him about Daniel, but maybe it was the wine, or the quiet, or the loneliness that had been eating at me for months. It's not trouble exactly, I admitted. It's just, we don't feel like a couple anymore. We're roommates. He barely notices me half the time. Frank nodded slowly. I've seen it before. Happens to a lot of marriages. Something in his voice felt heavier than casual conversation, and I suddenly noticed the way the firelight reflected in his eyes. He looked different. Or maybe I was just noticing him differently. You deserve to be noticed, Alyssa, he said quietly. The words slid under my skin like a spark. I should have laughed it off, should have changed the subject. Instead, I looked at him a beat too long. We talked for another hour. About life, about loneliness, about the ways people drift apart without meaning to. He refilled my wine glass. I laughed too loudly at one of his jokes. When he reached over to tuck a stray curl behind my ear, my heart stuttered. I should have pulled away. Instead, I froze. Alyssa, he said, his voice low. And then it happened. He kissed me. It was soft at first, testing, like he was giving me one last chance to walk away. But I didn't. My lips parted, and I kissed him back. The warmth of his hand on my cheek, the smell of smoke and whiskey, it all spun together in a dizzying mix of wrong and thrilling. It lasted seconds, maybe less, but it was enough to shatter the version of me I thought I knew. When we pulled apart, reality crashed in like a wave. My chest heaved, my stomach twisted. Oh my God, I whispered, standing so fast my chair scraped the patio. I need to go. Alyssa, don't, I said, shaking my head, already backing away. This was a mistake. A huge mistake. He stayed seated, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Regret. Maybe, or something darker. I grabbed my bag, muttered some excuse about being tired, and practically ran to my car. By the time I got home, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I stumbled into the bathroom, flipped on the light, and stared at myself in the mirror. Who was this woman staring back at me? Not Alyssa, the wife. Not Alyssa, the good daughter. Someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. I splashed cold water on my face, whispered to myself over and over. It was just a kiss. It didn't mean anything. It can't mean anything. But deep down, I knew better. Because once you cross a line like that, there's no going back. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house felt like a judgment. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me of the line I had crossed and the secret now burning in my chest. And worst of all, a small, dangerous part of me wondered if that kiss would really be the last. If you've ever taken one wrong step that you knew could destroy everything, you understand the weight pressing on my chest that night. Don't forget to like and subscribe if the story has you holding your breath, because what happened next turned that one mistake into a secret I could never outrun. I woke up the next morning with the taste of guilt in my mouth. It was sour, heavy, and impossible to swallow. I rolled over in bed and saw Daniel sleeping peacefully beside me, his arm draped over his side of the bed, not touching me. I studied his face for a moment, the man I married, the man who had always been steady, loyal, safe. And I had kissed my stepdad. The memory hit like a punch. My stomach twisted. I jumped out of bed, nearly tripping on the sheets, and locked myself in the bathroom. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I splashed cold water on my face and whispered the same lie I had clung to the night before. It was just a kiss. It's over. No one will ever know. But that's the thing about secrets. They don't stay quiet. They move in. They take up space. That day, I avoided my phone. I avoided looking at Daniel. I avoided existing, really. But by evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Frank, are you okay?" My heart jumped. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to say, "No, I'm not okay. I ruined everything." But instead, I typed, "Me. I'm fine. We can't talk about this." A few seconds later, another message came through. "Frank, I can't stop thinking about it. About you." I dropped the phone on the bed like it had burned me. This was wrong. Beyond wrong. But my chest tightened with something I didn't want to name. A dangerous thrill. A spark I hadn't felt in years. The days after that became a blur of tension. I avoided family dinners. I skipped calls from my mom. I couldn't even look her in the eye without feeling like a criminal. And yet, Frank kept texting. It started with harmless things. "Hope your day's good. I miss talking to you." Then it got bolder. "I keep thinking about your lips. Can I see you? Just to talk." I told myself no. I told myself it would ruin everything. But late one night, while Daniel snored beside me, I found myself typing. "Me. I can meet you tomorrow. Just to talk." We met in the most ordinary place imaginable, a park near my mother's house. It was early evening. Families were walking their dogs. Kids were on the swings. And there we were, two people carrying a sin, so heavy I could barely breathe. Frank smiled when he saw me. "Thanks for coming." I crossed my arms, my voice sharp. "This can't happen again. Ever." "I know," he said, but his eyes were soft. "I just needed to see you. I can't stop thinking about that night. About how lonely you looked by the fire. You deserve more than being invisible, Alyssa." The words pierced me. He had seen me, really seen me, when my own husband hadn't in months. And that's how the secret pulled me deeper. We met again, and again, always somewhere quiet, always brief. It started with talking, then with lingering touches. A brush of his hand against mine, his arm around my waist in the car. The thrill of danger mixed with guilt until I couldn't tell the difference anymore. The first time it went beyond a kiss was in his truck, parked under a bridge on the outskirts of town. Rain pattered against the roof. I remember my hands shaking, my heart pounding as I whispered, "We shouldn't." He kissed me anyway, and I didn't stop him. It was fast, messy, desperate. Not romantic, not beautiful, just raw and forbidden. When it was over, I sat there staring at the dashboard, trying to catch my breath. My chest felt hollow. "What are we doing?" I whispered. "I don't know," he said, voice heavy. "But I can't stay away from you." I hated how much I wanted to hear that. The days that followed were torture. I'd sit at dinner with Daniel, forcing myself to smile while my mind replayed everything I'd done. He would talk about work, and I'd nod, pretending I wasn't living a double life. My mother called me one night, excited about planning a family trip. My voice cracked as I told her I was busy. She had no idea I was dodging her because I couldn't bear to hear her voice and know the betrayal I carried. The secret began to consume me. I checked my phone obsessively. I jumped every time Daniel walked into the room, terrified he'd see the guilt on my face. I barely slept, replaying Frank's words in my head. You deserve more than being invisible. I started imagining my husband finding out. I imagined my mother's face. And every time I told myself, this has to stop. But it didn't. One night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying. I had built a cage of my own making. And the bars weren't made of metal. They were made of lies. If you've ever carried a secret that feels like it's eating you alive, you know what I mean. You know that tightness in your chest, that constant fear of being exposed. If you're still with me, and you've ever been trapped by your own bad choices, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this, because the next chapter is where it all comes crashing down. The thing about secrets is that they always demand interest. They never stay buried quietly. And my affair with Frank, was like a ticking time bomb, and I could hear it in my own chest. By the third month, I was a stranger in my own life. I smiled for my mother at Sunday dinners, laughed politely when Daniel talked about work, and then checked my phone in the bathroom for messages from the man who should have been family and nothing more. I knew it couldn't last. It started with suspicion. Daniel had never been the jealous type. If anything, he was too trusting. But lately, he began watching me differently. If I left the room with my phone, his eyes followed me. If I said I was running errands, he'd ask which store. One night, as I was chopping vegetables for dinner, he leaned against the counter and said, "You've been different lately. Distant." My hand froze on the cutting board. "I'm just tired." He studied me for a moment before nodding slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Then came the close call. I was in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, texting Frank. We were talking about meeting one last time, something we'd said at least 5 times before. Suddenly, Daniel walked in. I flinched and nearly dropped my phone. "Who are you texting?" he asked, casual on the surface, but his eyes sharp. "My mom," I lied without hesitation. My stomach twisted as I forced a smile. "She's asking about the barbecue next weekend." He nodded, but his gaze lingered. Then he walked to the dresser and grabbed a t-shirt. I exhaled slowly when he left. I didn't realize it then, but that moment sealed my fate. He wasn't convinced. The night it all came crashing down is seared into my memory. Daniel had a late shift, or so I thought. My mother had gone to visit a friend in another state for the weekend. That left Frank and me vulnerable to temptation. He texted me late that evening. "Frank, I can't stop thinking about you. Can I come over?" I should have said no. God, I should have said no. But loneliness is a liar. It tells you the fire won't burn you this time. So I said yes. Frank arrived around 9 p.m. I let him in quietly, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The house felt too still, like it knew we were about to sin again. We ended up in the bedroom. My bedroom. The one I shared with my husband. I will never forget the heat of his hands on my skin, the sound of my own ragged breathing, and the voice in the back of my mind screaming, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." And then the front door slammed. My blood turned to ice. "Daniel," I whispered, scrambling off the bed. We froze like children caught with stolen candy, except the cost of this was my marriage, my family, my life. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy. Fast. The door swung open. Daniel stood there, his face pale, his mouth slightly open. His eyes traveled from me to Frank, and in that split second, everything I had been hiding exploded into reality. He didn't yell. He didn't lunge. He just stared at me with a look I will never forget, a mix of betrayal, heartbreak, and disgust. My hands shook as I tried to cover myself with the sheet. "Daniel," my voice cracked. I can explain. Explain." His voice was flat, trembling with anger. "Explain how my wife is in our bed with her stepdad?" Frank muttered. "Daniel, Shut up!" Daniel snapped, his voice finally breaking into rage. "Get the hell out of my house. Now." Frank fumbled with his clothes, mumbling apologies that meant nothing. He left without looking back. And then it was just me and my husband. I tried to stand, to reach for him, but he stepped back like my touch was poison. "How long?" he asked, his voice raw. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. He shouted this time, the sound echoing off the bedroom walls. "How long?" "A few weeks," I whispered, tears spilling down my face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. He laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You destroyed everything. My trust. My love. My home. I sank to my knees on the carpet, sobbing, as he grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and began throwing clothes into it. Daniel, please, don't leave. We can talk about this. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. He stopped, looking down at me like he didn't recognize the woman kneeling in front of him. You didn't make a mistake, Alyssa. A mistake is tripping and spilling coffee. This was a choice. Over and over. Then he left. The door slammed, and the house fell silent except for the sound of my own crying. I spent the rest of the night curled up on the floor, staring at the empty doorway. My phone buzzed with a text from Frank, but I didn't open it. I couldn't, because in that moment, I finally realized the truth. I hadn't just betrayed my husband. I had betrayed myself. If you've ever watched the world you built collapse because of your own choices, you know that silence that comes after, the one that hums with regret and shame. If this story has you holding your breath, don't forget to like and subscribe. The final chapter will show you what it's like to live in the wreckage of a life you burned down with your own hands. Some mistakes echo long after the moment passes. It's been months since that night, months since Daniel walked out of our house and left me sitting on the bedroom floor with my shame. But sometimes, if I close my eyes, I can still hear the front door slam, still see the look on his face when he caught me with Frank. That mix of disbelief and heartbreak is burned into me forever. The days after he left were a blur of emptiness. I remember waking up the next morning and reaching for him out of habit. My hand hit nothing but cold sheets. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, the weight of my own choices pressing down on my chest like a boulder. I couldn't cry anymore. I felt hollow, like I had carved out the part of myself that could feel joy and thrown it away. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, the house felt foreign. His shoes by the door, his coffee mug on the counter. It all looked like a life that wasn't mine anymore. I saw my reflection in the kitchen window and whispered to myself, "You did this. You destroyed this." I avoided my mother for as long as I could, but family doesn't stay quiet forever. 3 days after Daniel left, my phone buzzed with her name. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me knew I couldn't run from this forever. "Alyssa," she said, her voice tight. "Where is Daniel? He's not answering my calls." My throat closed up. He left. A pause. A dangerous pause. Why? I sank to the floor, back against the cabinets. "Mom, I did something terrible." There was silence on the other end, and then her voice dropped to a whisper. "Frank told me." My chest burned. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what happened." She cut me off. "You don't know what happened? Alyssa, that man raised you. He was supposed to protect you and you," her voice broke. "You've ruined everything. My marriage. Your marriage. Our family." I pressed the phone to my ear, sobbing. I know. I can't take it back. I can't look at either of you," she said, her voice trembling with rage and grief. "Frank is gone. Packed his bags and left this morning. And as for you, I need space, Alyssa. I can't even." The line went dead. I sat there on the kitchen floor for what felt like hours, crying until my throat was raw. The weeks that followed were the loneliest of my life. Daniel didn't come home. He didn't call. He didn't text. I tried reaching out at first. Long messages, voicemails where I begged him to meet me, to yell at me, to do anything other than ignore me. But silence was his answer. Even Frank was gone. I heard through a distant cousin that he'd moved 2 states over. He didn't try to contact me. Maybe he hated himself as much as I hated myself. Or maybe he just wanted to forget I ever existed. Either way, I was alone. I quit my job for a while. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't walk into a grocery store without imagining people whispering behind my back. I'd see a father with his grown daughter and feel sick to my stomach, imagining what people would think if they knew what I had done. I started therapy. The first session, I couldn't even speak. I just sat there, tears streaming down my face, while the therapist waited. When I finally found the words, they came out in a choked whisper. "I blew up my life for a moment of feeling wanted." She nodded gently. "Why did you need to feel wanted so badly?" That question gutted me. Because deep down, I knew the answer. I had let myself disappear in my own life. I had been so desperate to feel seen, to feel alive again, that I reached for the most forbidden thing within reach. And in doing so, I destroyed everything that truly mattered. Months later, Daniel agreed to meet me for coffee. I nearly passed out from nerves walking into that cafe. It felt like the universe mocking me, sending me back to the kind of place where my downfall began. He was already there, sitting by the window. He looked thinner, tired, older. When he saw me, his jaw tightened, but he didn't leave. "Thank you for coming," I whispered, sliding into the seat across from him. He stared at his cup. "Why did you do it, Alyssa?" Tears pricked my eyes. I don't know if there's an answer that makes sense. I was lonely. I felt invisible. And Frank, he noticed me. He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Do you hear yourself? You burned down 2 marriages because you felt invisible." I shook my head, sobbing. "I know. I hate myself every day. If I could take it back." "You can't," he said sharply. "You can't ever take it back. And I can't unsee what I saw that night. I loved you, Alyssa. I trusted you. And you broke me." I couldn't speak. I could only cry quietly into a napkin, knowing every word he said was true. When he left, he didn't say goodbye. Today, the house is empty. My marriage is over. My relationship with my mother is shattered. And the man I betrayed everyone for? He's gone too. All that's left is me, and the echo of the worst decision I ever made. I keep a single photo on my nightstand. It's from 3 years ago, me, Daniel, and my mom smiling at a family cookout. Frank is in the background, flipping burgers, like a normal day in a normal family. I look at it sometimes and whisper, "You threw this all away for nothing." Because that's what it was. Nothing. A moment of selfishness. A flash of excitement. A kiss that spiraled into a secret I'll carry to my grave. And now, all I have left is regret. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I need you to hear this. Don't be me. Don't let loneliness trick you into destroying your life for a fleeting thrill. Don't betray the people who love you for someone who never truly will. Because when the fire burns out, all you're left with is ash. If this story moved you, like and subscribe for more raw, honest confessions and cautionary tales. Sometimes, the most painful stories are the ones that teach us the most. And I have learned the hard way.